The late 90s was truly the time where survival horror started to become a phenomenon. Many survival horror games in the 90s and early 2000s had some amazing ideas, one of which was a results screen. After the credits were done rolling, results screens would pop up to show various stats and information about your playthrough, one of which was something that was very ahead of its time: a timer. Various games in the genre would give you a better ranking or unlockables for completing the game quickly, incentivizing replaying it multiple times. This is where some people unknowingly had their first taste at speedrunning. Silent Hill 3 has become one of the most broken and intriguing runs in the series, but of course, it wasn't always this way. How much has the game truly evolved and changed as a speedrun over the years? Let's go back to where it all began, in the town of Silent Hill. On October 2004, Ecudet performed a run of Silent Hill for the PlayStation 1, clocking in at 35 minutes and 29 seconds in-game time. Eku doesn't explain the run much, but does state that it was done on normal difficulty from a fresh file while acquiring the Bad Plus ending. It was the run that started it all. Eku went on to running Silent Hill 2 as well in 2006, and these runs were posted for the earliest of speedrun enthusiasts to observe. Zegan was the first person to submit a Silent Hill 3 speedrun on PlayStation 2, completed in 2006 as well, with a time of 45 minutes and 49 seconds in-game time on easy difficulty. A year after Zegan's attempt, Introverter came into the scene with a large improvement, clocking in at 41 minutes and 7 seconds. This route was a lot cleaner, but more importantly, it used guns this time. Unfortunately, both of those runs are stuck on SDA, and the game didn't see much action for a long time. That is, until a runner named M1 Account began his speedrunning journey, where he would stream his attempts of Silent Hill 3 on Twitch in 2013. M1 would complete a run clocking it at 41 minutes flat, making it the first run in 6 years to improve the world record.
Well, I guess I have the world record to this game now. That kinda sucks.
M1 achieved this time by following a lot of what Introverter established in their run. Using the handgun on Splitworm was introduced, but M1 forgot the handgun ammo for it. This is the first big mistake, but consistency with movement and menuing will always be more important to keep the run afloat. He doesn't forget the shotgun in the subway, which is the gun used for the rest of the bosses in the game, 2 of which can kill just about any good run. Missionary isn't too hard, but Leonard has the chance to dive under the water and waste a chunk of time, but that wasn't the case in this run. The other boss that can cause trouble is Memory of Alessa, who I will be referring to as Alessa for the rest of the video. She has a tendency to run away from Heather, making it a bit difficult to shotgun her down fast. This is what happened to M1, and the fight was quite messy, making this one of the biggest singular time losses in the run. Chapel was also pretty messy.
Interesting mistake. Holy moly, I lost more than 5 seconds on that.
He proceeds to say that he wants to keep running to get a good world record.
Beat this world record, so there's a world record that's actually good. But on the other hand, 4100 is kind of really cool of a number, so what a dilemma.
Okay, he's not wrong, but was he the only runner? We're about to dive into a time period that is an incredibly important part of this game's speedrun history, the Shunpuck Saga. On November 29th, just 3 days after M1's 41 flat, Shunpuck also finished the game in 41 minutes flat. On December 18th, just a few weeks later, Shunpuck would finish a run clocking in at 40 minutes 38 seconds, but while this was a nice improvement, something more important about these 2 runs from Shunpuck is the use of a new strategy, which would also serve as the introduction of the submachine gun into the run. Shunpuck picks up the submachine gun and some ammo in order to use it on Alessa. In her first 3 phases, Alessa can run away after each shotgun shot, which is what we saw in M1's run. The submachine gun's fire rate eliminates the chance of her running away, making the fight much more consistent. For the next few months, a handful of runners would show up to join the fun, including Sim, H-Shroom, Techie, and Sasam. Shunpuck held on to the record until M1's return on February 4th of 2014, with a 40-minute, 21-second time. This is what would start a string of improvements for the game. February 14th, 40.11 by M1. February 19th, 40 flat by Shunpuck. April 20th, the first official sub 40 by M1, clocking in at 39.53. And to finally end this string of improvements with no big changes to the route, on June 8th, Shunpuck got a 39.41. At this point, a lot of work had been put in by these two, but Shunpuck was really experimenting for a while. She was in the lab, trying new strategies and tricks, going all the way back to November 2013. The quick closer death strap at the very beginning of the run, where you would attempt to bait out the strong attack from the closer before the coaster to initiate the end of the nightmare sequence. Stun-locking Leonard with the shotgun, avoiding him swimming around under the water for over 10 seconds. A quick split worm strap with the handgun, which can be finished in only 6 shots. The souvenir key drop manipulation, making it much more consistent for runners to avoid running around the shop trying to get the key to drop. Strategies to take care of Alessa quickly without her running around in her first 3 phases. I mean, hell, there were even things that were far ahead of its time, like the first instance of quick saving and quick loading being used to save time. Quick save, quick load would skip the footsteps at the beginning of Chapel, which wasn't allowed at first due to difference of opinions on what should or shouldn't be allowed. Around this time, Shunpuck also found wrong warping with the Princess Heart Key, a way to zip across a room in the sewers, and the first instance of going out of bounds by getting hit by an enemy. None of this was useful at the time, but they were exciting things to find, considering the potential behind them. With all of that said, Shunpuck really opened a lot of doors for this game's speedrun, and the excitement and discoveries is a great way to keep motivated during the grind to improve times. Although, when you've grinded out a game enough, you start to hit a wall where in order to save time, you must play perfectly. In Shunpuck's description for her last run, she says, "Could be improved, but I may just give up at this point." Clearly, things were getting difficult. It was time to go back into the lab to find ways of lowering the time beyond optimization. While the 39.41 stood as the record, Shunpuck found an interesting discovery in October: the weapon aim animation skip. By hitting the sprint button immediately after pressing the aim key, you can fire your gun without the animation of Heather readying the weapon. Upon discovering it, Shunpuck immediately wanted to implement it into boss fights that use the shotgun. However, the one section it proved most useful was in the horses section before the Alessa fight. In order to activate the Alessa fight, you must kill all of the carousel horses. These horses move up and down slowly, which forces you to shoot them in a specific order. Getting a shot off may be faster now with the animation skip, but more importantly, the order in which the horses are shot can be altered, which would result in activating the Alessa fight 12 seconds faster than before. With this newfound knowledge, Shunpuck left the lab to pursue a new time. Not only did she put the new horse's strategy to the test, but she achieved a time of 39.18, which was an impressive improvement considering how Shunpuck felt after the last PB. It was proof that the movement could still be improved by implementing various strafes in certain rooms. In the early days, 180 turns and basic tank control movement was utilized, but over time, runners understood the strafe mechanic a lot better. By using the strafe mechanic to turn into the forward running motion, runners can eliminate the time it took to turn Heather the direction they wish to go. Doing this can save a lot of time over the run, and it also makes it possible to shave entire seconds off of certain rooms. In late 2014 and early 2015, this became the meta of movement for the game, and along with this optimization and the discoveries by Shunpuck, came new runners excited to join the community's effort to beat Silent Hill 3 faster. Oso Panda, Zorky, Ezormer, Techie, T-Dog, Big Man Japan, Bazookia, Claire Sable, San Gillespie, Jokey, and more. This is when the community would get a sudden boom in activity for a couple of months. And on January 31st, 2015, Big Jim would beat the world record, clocking in at 38 minutes and 43 seconds. While having a new runner on top was exciting, it was only a few hours later that Shunpuck would improve it with a 38:21. The very next day, something cool happened. A speedruns live race. This involved 16 runners, all different skill level and experience. One of the runners I mentioned just before, Big Man Japan, was able to snag the world record on March 18th with a 38:15. But it wouldn't be long until Shunpuck returned to reclaim it. 6 days later, on the 24th, Shunpuck achieved the first ever 37, with a 37:56. This was also around the time that a speedrun community member by the name of Suicide Machine made an IGT plugin for a live split. This gave the community a better understanding of how much time they were saving or losing, meaning Shunpuck could really analyze her runs more thoroughly and time her new strategies more effectively. Speaking of new strategies, this is around the time Shunpuck would toy with the horses pattern more, discovering that the save menu can be entered before and after killing them to save in-game time. With her vast knowledge of the game and determination to continue improving, Shunpuck began her quest to push the game as far as she could. "36 minutes and 57 seconds. Not only was this such an amazing achievement and milestone, but it also introduced the re-implementation of the submachine gun. The submachine gun strategies were tossed aside due to the fact that picking it up and the ammo took a lot more time than it took to just kill Alessa effectively with the shotgun. But what wasn't tested was Leonard. Using the submachine gun on Leonard would actually save 8 seconds, and the rest of the run was fairly clean as well. This was it. The last minute barrier that could possibly be broken without new discoveries. Not only that, but Shunpuck really proved herself here as the best Silent Hill 3 runner, holding every main category record, some of which were almost an entire minute ahead of the competition. Shunpuck pushed Silent Hill 3 with no competition needed. Her discoveries, her time labbing strategies, and her effort to push the game as far as she could is one of the most noteworthy contributions to the Silent Hill 3 speedrunning community that we will ever see.
Well, back in 2015, when I was grinding for 37-minute times, I don't think I put much thought into a specific time or a milestone that I wanted. More so for me, it was that I wanted to complete a recorded run that implemented everything that the entire community had discovered up until that point. So all the glitches, the tricks, and the strategies. But I also wanted a run that was sufficiently polished. Each run got closer to that 36 that I achieved back in 2015. It felt like it had too many mistakes that I couldn't be happy with sitting on. And don't get me wrong, the 36 wasn't perfect still, but ultimately all I wanted was a showcase of all the hard work that every person who ever worked on the Silent Hill 3 speedrun, all of that hard work they had put into this run during the 8 years between the SDA run in 2007 and my run in 2015. I just wanted a record of that, and that's why in my SDA submission I tried my best to credit every single person I remembered that had contributed something. Because really that's always been the coolest thing about speedrunning to me, is seeing a bunch of strangers come together and really collaborate on something that they all love. And I hope that I see something like that next year when it's been 8 years since my run, because I know a lot has changed in the run since then. It's absolutely bonkers now.
January 2016. My now best bud Bach Soup had been running multiple classic survival horror games, including Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and the first Silent Hill game. He decided to take up Silent Hill 3 and found himself improving quite quickly. Thanks to his experience with the classic survival horror controls and mechanics, he was able to climb the leaderboard pretty fast.
Yes.
And on April 7th, 2016, he would finally beat Shunpuk's time with a 36:55. Bach's grind to beat Shunpuk was very exciting. He really had to optimize his movement and Alessa fight to secure the time save needed to beat Shunpuk in the first place. Although, this run certainly proved that there was more work to be done still, as Bach showed his sum of best at the end of the run, which was a 36:44. Most of that comes down to fractions of seconds in many rooms throughout the run. Did Bach's time inspire others to run the game more? Perhaps this would lead to another boom in activity. Unfortunately, this was far from the case. This period of time is what I refer to as the Bachba supremacy. Get it? Because the inactivity was probably due to many variables, but Shunpuk and Bach's times were clearly intimidating for the other players in the top 5. Without Shunpuk in the mix, Bach wouldn't have to continue running it, and he shifted to work on other games. Fast forwarding again to July 2017, Bach himself decided to improve the record to 35:52, knowing that he could still improve. But Bach's return came with a big surprise. Shunpuk decided to return to the lab, leading to a very strange discovery.
Welcome to the Borley Haunted Mansion. We're so glad you came.
I've mentioned a few times before that this game is timed by the in-game timer. In the Borley Haunted Mansion section, the audio of the narrator needs to finish in order to progress through the doors. Knowing this, Shunpuk fiddled around with the Borley Haunted Mansion and tried to find ways of maybe stopping the in-game timer while also having the audio continue to play. She discovered that by alt-tabbing and clicking the game window, everything but the audio would stop. The audio is still playing, so it's safe to assume that this meant the game was still running normally. After some testing, this alt-tab method seemingly freezes the in-game timer as well. If done optimally, this discovery would save roughly 2 minutes. Obviously, stuff like this leads to differing opinions on the use of such strategies, so Shunpuk decided that it would be best to not display it just yet to the community. After a short period of time, Shunpuk did eventually show people. As time went on without official decisions being made, one of the runners who found out, Sasam, decided to do a run with it just to see if she could get a free PB. Lo and behold, 37:48 was the final time, shaving almost a minute off for free. Even with being so rusty at the game, a PB was inevitable. She really wanted people to come back to the game and increase activity with free PBs, so the run was submitted to the leaderboard as a way of saying, hey, we need to make a decision on this, so here's a run with it. July 15th was the date of this run, but it would be a couple of weeks before someone would take Sasam's jump from 10th to 5th on the leaderboard a bit more seriously. That someone was Nub Zombie, who upon analyzing Sasam's run, was certain that he could drive more attention to the trick by attempting to beat Bach's world record.
36:44 is the new cheesy Silent Hill 3 record. Sorry to do this to you, Bakwa Soup. You have to run this game again and use Borley Skip and get the world's first sub 36.
This was the world record run that really shook things up. It felt like top runners had to start over again by grinding yet again to achieve that top level movement and execution, paired with the free time save of the Borley alt tab. Despite Bach feeling a bit defeated by this, he rose up to the challenge. On August 7th, he ran the game again. He used Borley Skip.
So, do you guys want to see how to get world record?
And he got the world's first sub 36.
World record. World record by like a minute. Just kidding, I used a glitch that's not allowed. I'll be right back.
While the run was messy and nowhere close to the execution of his 3652, it was yet another big milestone. Bach knew that he needed to keep grinding to achieve the same execution he had prior, which, in theory, would snag him the world's first 34 as well.
This might be a gold split if I nail Missionary here. No! Now for the new strat. Wow, the 7-second time save, that's disgusting. Oh god, I'm nervous. Hardest trick in the game coming up. Alright, this is probably where the run's gonna get thrown, but this is world record pace. But it will not be world record pace after this boss. Trust me. Okay, so far so good. So far so good. Let us go. Come on, be dead, be dead. Oh, that was a really good fight. Here we go. World record.
1 minute and 59 seconds faster than his record before Barley Alt-Tab. It was no surprise to see this achievement shortly after the discovery, but with his impressive achievements also comes a sort of, curse. You see, Sasam's wish of a boom in activity from 2 minutes of free time save was met with quite a disappointing turnout. Only a few runners came back to improve their time, and only Bach actually put in the effort to grind the time down. Shunpuck thought that her discovery would be controversial, but if anything, most people didn't seem to take note of it, or even care that runners were utilizing it. Bach was, well, yet again, in a position where he would be the only one willing to push the game further. This would be the beginning of the Bachba Supremacy, Episode 2, June 12th of 2018. Punchy came back to improve his time, achieving a 35:16.
What's the record? None of your f***ing beeswax, mate.
Snagging second place and putting him in reach of beating Bach. Punchy said that he was just trying to improve his own time and didn't think he could quite match the sheer grind ethic that Bach had when running. He would be the only person to get within reach of world record throughout the entirety of the second Bachba Supremacy. Until Alex0023, or Alex from Canada. They would start a new short period of time that we call the Canadian Conspiracy Case. They had never communicated with any other runners, they had never been in any of the Twitch chats of the runners, and their SRC profile had no social platforms linked to talk to them. This was also before SRC implemented the messaging system, so there was no way to communicate with them other than commenting on their YouTube channel. Alex posted some videos of Silent Hill 3 discoveries months prior to this run on a different YouTube account, which included an out of bounds at the bookstore that nobody else could even replicate. For whatever reason, that account was deactivated, which would only raise suspicion about their activity and knowledge of the game. People had already disregarded that Alex, only to realize that the Alex with their world record submitted on a new YouTube account was the prior Alex who posted these videos. The Silent Hill speedrun community at this point were all pretty friendly and tuned into each other's streams quite often, so having an outsider just show up out of nowhere to post videos of discoveries that nobody could replicate, deactivate the account, and then make a new one to claim the world record a few months later? Yeah. But there's even more to this. During this time, research about Silent Hill 3's various EXE versions was underway. This led to a runner by the name of Jokey finding out that the Silent Hill 3 proxy EXE had a chance to alter the way that the game's behavior and speed worked. Runs using this EXE were invalid from that point forward. And unfortunately for Alex, all of the runs that were attempted to beat Bach were using this EXE. It was also theorized that Alex's discovery of the out of bounds at the bookstore on their last YouTube account was due to this EXE changing game behavior. Remember how I mentioned that there was no way to contact them? That became a big issue, because the only way we could notify Alex that their runs were all invalid is to reject the submitted run on speedrun.com with a mod note. Title bar of game window indicates you're likely using the shproxy exe or some sort of framerate fix. This can cause unintended behavior with the game speed and isn't allowed. Days after this rejection, Alex just posted another run to their other YouTube account, which tied Bach's record. The entire community was so confused. How did he not see the rejection message? Why is he putting it on a different channel now? How do we help this person? We surely thought they would check, but alas, Alex posted yet another world record, clocking in at 34:46, that we painfully had to reject. We weren't exactly sure what was going on at this point, because it felt like he was messing with us. I simply said this in the second rejection note. This run is clearly not the base game. For the longest time, we've requested that you join our Discord in order to get you a viable version of the game for submissions. You have the skill, so please join our Discord so we can sort the situation out. Here's the link. Hey everyone, I am using a copy I found online. It had 5 discs and a widescreen patch. If anyone could help me get a copy, that would be great. Also, is the widescreen patch allowed? This led to Jokey troubleshooting the issue with them for a few hours until everything was resolved, and their game version was finally viable for the leaderboard. Alex had to achieve world record for a 4th time, which we thought would be quite discouraging. But to our surprise, only 2 days later, on November 2nd, Alex beat Bach by 1 second. And the day after that, reclaimed the time that they had achieved with the faulty exe, clocking in at 34:46. Many of us were relieved to see it all resolved, and we thought Alex would be done after that run, but Alex wasn't done. 4 days later, they achieved a 34:41. This run was showcasing some of the best movement and execution that the community had ever seen. This was the first time in 2.5 years that Bach was finally beaten by pure optimization. It's almost like this crazy conspiracy behind Alex's validity in his runs just fueled him more. That run was untouched for about 4 months, and after those 4 months, Alex would return to put the cherry on top of all that hard work. They improved the record by another 9 seconds on February 16th, 2019, clocking in at 34:32. Perfecting the execution of item pickups and strafe turns, squeezing out every fraction of a second possible in every room, and getting some of the best known times for boss fights. Alex went from being the most mysterious, confusing, and suspicious entity in Silent Hill speedrunning to the best Silent Hill 3 runner anybody had ever seen. This record would stand for 16 months. Fortunately, this record didn't follow the same curse as Bach's records, and plenty of new runners had entered the scene during Alex's reign. Runners such as I See Dead Kittens, Ravenheart, Catlink, MacMCD, Toxic TT, Johnny Helicopter, Clay, Jewhorse, Daniel Ark, and Sevs AR. But there's one new runner that I have yet to mention, and that runner is Soso. Let's rewind back to the time when Shunpuck was in the lab, posting videos to YouTube of various things she had found. One of those videos shows off a zip in the sewer area. That was back in 2015. Fast forward 5 years to June 11th, 2020, and Soso is messing around with the sewer zip. She thought that there might be more to what Shunpuck found all of those years ago, and started to try new things. One of which was quick saving. What Soso didn't know is that quick saving and quick loading during the beginning of Heather's falling animation would be the lightning in a bottle discovery that would start a new period of time that I'll call the saving grace. Get it? Cause you saved the Soso quick saved as soon as Heather's jump down animation started, and then she quick loaded. After quick loading, Heather's position in the room was completely different. Quick loading one more time after that would change her positioning yet again. Heather would be clipped into a wall. Running to Heather's left would lead to her running out of bounds, and with this in mind, Soso explored a bit to find the door leading to the exit of the sewers. This effectively skips the last puzzle of the sewers and saves roughly 1 minute. So how does it work? Well, an OG runner that I've mentioned earlier, Jokey, was happy to provide a very in-depth explanation of how Soso's discovery led to Silent Hill 3 being busted wide open. When you walk around, the game keeps track of the last solid ground position Heather walked on, using the cell's collidors. The world is a bunch of cells, which contains a room each. So for example, all of the sewer rooms are in their own cells of the sewer world, and one of them is loaded at a time. When you walk over a ledge, Heather is literally walking in the air. Once the game detects that, it draws a line from Heather's last on solid ground position to her current position, and finds the first location on that line to intersect solid ground. After that, the game snaps Heather back to that new point and plays the tether animation. The problem is that the last solid ground position is not saved, because the original game didn't have quick saves, and the port devs never expected people to save while in the air, so when you save and load back, you're still in the air, which the game detects and draws a line from Heather's position to the last solid ground position. Since that position wasn't saved, it's changed to 000, the origin point of the world. Wherever the first solid ground on that line is, in the current loaded cell, is where the game will snap Heather, resulting in a big teleport. Parallel to all of this, I was working on 3D tools to extract the game levels so I could see them, see the collisions, and modify them. Something I also discovered was the event zones. Events are everything from triggers, doors, and things you can interact with in the world. They're not all active at once, so the world will be split into 1 to 3 zones depending on the size. Even if you go out of bounds, all of the events in the other zones are useless to you since they're not loaded. I knew out of bounds was possible in general, so I started asking myself, if you out of bounds from this room, where could you go, what could you do, and would it even be useful? From there, I started making a list of useful ones. When Soso found the original out of bounds in the sewers, I could immediately tell where you should go from there because I had a map of the whole game. I went back to look at all of the maps with a ledge, drew a line from the origin of the world to the various ledges, and looked to see where it intersected with the ground in the way we wanted. Thanks to the tool, it all went very quickly. I basically just knew by looking at it what was viable and what wasn't. If you're sitting there with your mind completely blown, I understand. It was information overload for me too the first time I read it, but dang is it cool. One thing to note before I get into things further is that Heather doesn't fall off of ledges that lead to death on easy difficulty. It's only on normal and above where Heather can fall off of deadly ledges. That means that this game wasn't only going to be busted open, but it also changed what action level difficulty would be fastest to play on. So everything that's explained after the out of bounds in the sewers is on normal difficulty. At this point, Alex had held the record for so long, making this new development not only the biggest one in the history of the game, but one that would leave a lot of runners eager to return and improve. On June 16th, just 5 days after the initial discovery, Punchy became the first person to ever beat Alex's 3432. Considering there was an entire free minute to save, Punchy's 3416 wasn't necessarily impressive, but the importance of it wasn't the time in the end. It was bringing attention to the new discovery, and it was just the start of great things to come.
Bald Huggy, think I can get sub 34? It's possible for sure.
On June 25th, Bach returned to test the waters on the new skip.
World record, I guess.
Despite liking the new developments, Bach's desire to keep up with Silent Hill 3's inevitable fate of being busted open for an unknown amount of weeks simply wasn't there. That 3409 would be his last PB, but perhaps one day he will return. During this time, 2 other runners, Phonetic Fox and Xenoman, were also able to beat Alex's time with the new skip, and Punchy even acquired the first ever sub 34, clocking in at 33:45. Punchy had really put in the hours at this point, which was demonstrated in his improved execution and attention to small time saves. He improved it by 7 seconds a few days later, and activity died down after that. That was the last bit of time shaved off until October 16th, where Alex would return to reclaim the throne with a 33:35. Alex would continue to grind the time down achieving a 33:31 on November 3rd, and then a 33:29 on November 14th. During the low activity between Punchy and Alex's records, Jokey and Soso were in the lab. Jokey had everything mapped out for Soso to test. It wasn't long until a bunch of new skips were found, a lot of them requiring normal difficulty due to Heather having a falling animation on deadly ledges. This made some runners feel iffy about whether or not they would save time in the end.
The jury is out on whether or not we're going to do only the first two and stick to easy mode for runs for the faster boss kills and easier ammo routing, or if eventually it will evolve into normal mode being faster for more tricks but tougher boss fights. From my research, I'm leaning towards easy, but the jury is out. The research is ongoing.
Let's fast forward to January of 2021, where I can show you what Jokey and Soso's work truly achieved during that time. Alex's 33:29 on November 14th was on easy action difficulty. Now get this, on January 12th, Death Tropes achieves a 31:44 on normal action difficulty, almost 2 minutes faster with longer boss fights. So let's get into his run and break down the new routing and skips that would officially change this game's any % category. Originally, the start of this run requires you to die as soon as possible to the closer in order to end the nightmare sequence. Now that we're on normal difficulty, you can cause Heather to fall to her death instead, much quicker, and it also gets rid of the closer RNG completely. The Maul is practically the same, but with a different strategy for Splitworm due to it having a lot more health now. You take 3 shots, you wait for the head bobs, you shoot 3 more, and then you wait in place to bait an attack, allowing you to continuously shoot until it dies. It's not really a lot more health, but it's enough to completely change the way that you perform this fight. The next change is on the subway train transporting you to the underground sewer area, where a first aid kit that was originally skipped is now picked up for later use. This leads us to the skip that started this new broken route, the sewer skip. Death Tropes gets it first try and swiftly moves on to the hilltop building, where we'll see the next big skip of the run. This one is a little different, as it utilizes a deadly ledge. This is performed directly after entering the Hilltop Otherworld, and skips having to pick up the liver, the chemical, and the matches that you would need to light a painting on fire, which then opens a path to reach the vending machine containing the life insurance key. I know, right? Survival horror puzzles. So that life insurance key is actually used to unlock the door that leads to the spell that Heather needs to say out loud to make the monster blocking the exit vanish. This saves roughly 1 minute and 45 seconds. Pretty big stuff. After that, we head towards the next boss fight, which you can probably guess has a different method to it now, just like Splitworm. Due to the missionary having more health, you're required to do a 2-cycle fight now, which is totally dependent on missionary's movement and attack. Here, you can kind of see Death Tropes baits an attack to then get behind it for the first shot, and then you shoot it again while it's down. Originally, this would probably just end the fight. In this case, that third shot is going to require some good timing. If you shoot too early, the missionary's stand-up animation won't be finished, which is a waste of a shot because you're not going to get the knockdown animation. If you shoot too late, you might just end up in a wild goose chase.
Oh, stop running!
If timed correctly, with good positioning, you can get a knockdown straight away, and you can finish the fight with a final shot while it's down. A tricky fight that certainly needs a lot of practice. At the hospital, it's more important than ever to not take any additional hits from enemies. This can be pretty rough because there are just a lot of enemies that are all stacked in these little corridors. Considering the healing item route's a little bit more strict now, it's pretty bad if you do take additional hits. The next thing to note is that it's pretty vital to pick up the shoddy ammo on the table next to the locker where the nail polish remover is found, as well as the submachine gun ammo before the 3rd floor code. Not only that, but something pretty different here is that when you're in the Otherworld section, you need to pick up the ringing phone so that you can get some extra ammo right before the Leonard boss fight. Speaking of Leonard, his fight is very similar to the easy difficulty fight, but it takes 2 submachine gun clips this time. It's still very risky since Leonard can still swim away from the first shotgun shot. After the hospital's over, it's important to not use your ampule for stamina regeneration, and simply quick save and quick load to regenerate instead. Now we're at the Lakeside Amusement Park. This is where we have some huge skips. The Borley Alt-Tab is out, and the official Borley skip now involves the quick save quick load at a deadly ledge. This area's warp point brings you dangerously close to a crash, but with the right movement memorized, you can safely guide Heather all the way to the room with the dragon guarding the treasure, which is the room right before Alessa. This saves roughly a minute over the original Borley skip, and it only gets more wild from here, because killing the horses and Alessa is also out. The fight that was worked on the most by various runners for years is now completely axed from the run, using a skip method that I have yet to even show you in this video. As we've talked about earlier with the original Borley skip, alt-tabbing this game can cause some funky things to happen. Now, we gotta rewind all the way back to that Shunpuck playlist yet again. In this playlist was a video proving that you can go out of bounds by getting clipped through a wall from an enemy attack. Here you can see that Death Tropes is alt-tabbing constantly as this enemy hits Heather, which causes her to fall over, while simultaneously clipping through the lamp after getting back up. After the clip, quick saving and quick loading will allow Heather to fully clip out of bounds, where Death Tropes will set up another very tricky deadly ledge warp. This warp is also in a dangerous spot for crashing, but after hours of testing and navigating by Punchy, Big Man Japan, and Soso, a path was found to successfully run all the way to the door leading to the chapel. This skips the horses and Alessa and leads us to the chapel, where there's one more skip to marvel at. Shunpuck finding that enemy clip so long ago didn't just help with skipping Alessa, but it's come full circle as this chapel out of bounds skip uses the same method. The room before the hallway where you open the secret passage is where Death Tropes will have a helping spike from a closer to clip through the wall, allowing him to carefully guide Heather all the way to the final door in the game. That brings us to the final thing to explain in this bonkers showcase of a run. Now, unlike the other bosses, God does actually have quite a lot of health on normal compared to easy, and does way more damage. With the shotgun ammo that you saved from skipping fighting the horses and Alessa, all you need in this route is more healing items than the previous route. This is why you pick up some extra medkits and avoid using the ampule for stamina before and after hospital. Even with a good healing item and ammo route, fighting God here at the end can be really stressful. Death Tropes was able to keep his cool, and after a successful fight, the first ever 31 was achieved. This is the run that would solidify the new any% route.
That's it.
1 week after the 3144, Punchy would return with the 3117,
That is the run desired.
which would last all the way until March 17th, when Punchy would achieve the first ever 30 with a 3051.
No f***ing way, dude. I banked it.
The run was a great showcase of achieving all of the skips relatively quickly, with not too many mistakes.
What the f***? That went clean through the wall. I didn't even do the thing.
This record would last a few months, until a runner named Saf would enter the mix. He ran the game on console beforehand, and even helped me push those times down before the wild discoveries would arise for the PC version. This new route intrigued him, and he grinded his way to beating Punchy with a 3048. Saf wanted to improve, and would continue running until acquiring a time of 3025 on July 18th, with the speedrun.com submission description saying, "Trash. Silent Hill 3 went from being a straightforward run with practically no exploits, to a run that requires perfect execution of massive skips that require inputs during very small windows of time before traveling the dangerous abyss, or they rely on the attack pattern of enemies while alt-tabbing to possibly clip through walls. It is incredible that the run had even gotten to this point in the first place, but the Silent Hill community knew what needed to be achieved, and Saf was the one willing to do it at the time.
The D-roasts.
On December 13th, the first ever sub 30-minute time by a single second. Oh my god, I mean, watching that timer tick down during the god fight was edge of your seat content, and it ended with Saf being quite relieved to know that he got the 29 by the skin of his teeth. Saf served as an inspiration for Death Tropes to join in on the sub 30 club. Death Tropes would not only join Saf, but he would also become the world record holder yet again. On January 24th, he would achieve a time of 29:55.
Thank you.
Out of any of the Silent Hill games, I think this has the most interesting, rich history behind its routing, strategies, discoveries, and talented runners. I'd like to thank you for watching and learning all about it. Thanks to all of the amazing community members who were involved in this as well. Whether you were able to provide me resources, footage, explanations, or simply your talent, you were a big help. I would also love to give a huge thanks to Hummeldon for editing this up for me, and you all should as well. I'll leave his link in the description, or you can poke the sub buttons on the screen here. Thank you again so much for watching. Much love, and I will see you again next time for another thrilling speedrunning story.